Okay, like it's the biggest one of the topics that really irritates me or annoys me. I wouldn't say annoys me. Like the topic is, of course, wanting that validation from the Olympics. Why do we need esports to be in the Olympics? Like, okay, I'm just gonna say it right. Like, esports is not declining at all. Look at each year, right? And one of the most crazy things why I feel like esports is doing so good, of course, you have n number of titles. You might feel like there are not a lot of titles that do as good as Dota, League, Valorant now, or Overwatch. But then again, our numbers are big. Come on, dude. Our numbers are not like they're not small numbers at all. And why do we need Olympics to be that validation factor or validation platform? Why do we always need to be saying, oh, esports equal to sports? Or I feel like we are already there, you know?
Well, I believe we're not just there, we're there and beyond at this point. Because I think it comes from also the fact that when we started off as gamers, right? You talk like 10 years back, 15 years back, and we used to think of tournaments or even as a career, if you want to make a career in gaming, you would obviously be compared to be cricket, football, anything of that sorts. And I believe uh, the I won't just call it a generation gap, but the fact that people who've not been introduced to gaming or the side of esports as such, they feel Olympics is the epitome of things. That is the base, but that's simply not the case. That is simply not the case, and you don't need validation from there because look, the numbers are real, the money is real. Then why do we need validation from somebody else? You don't. You simply just don't. You do not.
Yeah, I mean, okay, let's say we need to have a certain body, a governing body. I feel like, yeah, in that aspect, yes, esports is a little underdeveloped. We don't have a body that really represents everybody. I mean, esports is, come on, there's so many different types of gamers, so many different type of genres, so many types of uh player. There's so many different kinds of things involved. It's just too big. And I feel like there cannot be just one body that represents it. But then again, yeah, I do get the Olympic part, but I feel like we are not far behind at all. Prize money, viewerships, what brand partnerships, media, come on, like. And I feel like we get lost when we keep trying to compare. And okay, let's say there's so many people out there, or the ecosystem works in a way right now, at least in India, the way we are heading with, let's say, mobile gaming esports, we have our own Olympics to deal with. Everyone has their own big event. I feel like we have our own mini Olympics every year. Yeah, every publisher has their own big event. I feel like, yeah, that is great. That should be celebrated. I don't feel like we need the Olympics to say, oh, esports is legit. And it's true, because look at LCS, look at Valorant's first major land. Look at the international. We never needed Olympics. We This is what's the beauty. That's just the beautiful thing about gaming, right? It's so many different people from different parts of the world coming together. And when you see all of these people putting out these big events, that's what makes it beautiful. I am not saying Olympics isn't great. It is, of course, Olympics is great. But esports itself has their own Olympics. That's what I'm trying to say.
But you can't compare these two things. I'm just saying
Yeah,
that.
you can. Why do we need to do it? That's what I'm trying to say. Why?
Absolutely, and I agree with you on this. But the other thing, right? You mentioned governing bodies. I actually have a very all right. I don't know if this is too extreme of an opinion, but I believe all everybody that has tried as so far, especially let's talk about India for example. We've had people who tried governing bodies, and to put it simply, it's been a shit show.
Oh yeah.
It has, and we've had articles go out in the international media. We've had people talk about it, and you can't really govern esports as a whole. You simply cannot. Obviously, there can be checks and balances, sure, on the legal side of things, but you can't really, as a whole, be like, hey man, esports falls under this umbrella and we want to control it, or we want to be the responsible party for making sure that everything is being taken care of smoothly. Absolutely not. You can't do that. And I think we've had a lot of conversation about, like, we've had a lot of dialogue about
Yep.
this. Even
Yep.
contracts, for example. Imagine this: you call yourself a governing body, and then your contract itself is one of the most draconian contracts you've seen. It doesn't add up.
I think I know which incident or body you're referring to here. Like, I think the whole world knows it. That's why, like, when you say governing body, that's one of the first thing that comes into my mind. Like, honestly, yes. I'll tell you what the problem is. This is my opinion, of course. One is the governing body. The body, let's just say the committee or whatever you want to call it, organization needs to have people who are actual players or who
Absolutely.
are actual people from publishing, or people who've done business from, let's say, a tournament organizer perspective. Or you need mix of people to set up those bodies. You can't just have anyone just coming in and saying, hey man, I'm gonna be running the show. It's like saying I have an organization that runs the this XYZ region's chef committee, when I don't even know how to cook an omelet, or even don't know how to turn on the stove or something. I know it's a stupid example, but you get what I'm trying to say. Like,
I do. I
it's
do.
very basic. If that organization doesn't have anyone who's ever worked in gaming or has never been a player, I'm sorry, they will never understand what contracts are. They will never understand how partnerships work, or how a certain team is supposed to represent a country. So unless you get, I'm gonna say, a handful of people who are experts in this field. And the thing is, esports, I'm sorry, is still okay. This term esports is also still used so loosely, and
Oh yeah.
the community in India is so small. Everyone knows everyone. Everyone knows me, Romeo. Everyone knows Mamba, Ranjit. Everyone knows each other. And I'm sorry, you cannot run a show and then expect the other person to not know who you are. If you really want to represent something, you need to back that shit up. You cannot just say, "Hey man, I've been doing this." If I go and say, "Hey man, I'm gonna do a WWE fighting games event or something," and I'm like, I'm an expert. I am not. I've never worked with. Okay, I've worked with uh, Injustice when I was working with a monitor gun, but that doesn't make me an expert.
Absolutely.
Why go down that road, dude? It's just the industry is so small, and I respect whoever out there is investing, who's putting. I will not take names. I respect all of these guys, right? They've been in the industry as long as I have. The industry is way young, also. Um, I'm sorry, it's just gonna take a lot of time to build the kind of body we want to see. Yeah.
But I think, again, I mean, sure, you're right about the industry being young. It's just coming out of its infancy right now. Because you go back like 5 years, we like the sizes of the communities, right? They were so small. Even now, obviously, mobile has pushed the numbers as well. But that's not the point. The point is that if you walk up to somebody and tell them, "Hey, man, I've been doing this for the past 10 years," and you've never really heard the name, and then suddenly they're like, they want to be the flag bearer of esports in a particular region, people will call you out. They will.
Of course. That's exactly what I'm saying. Like, I am not saying. So, okay, there's a lot of red flags. There are a lot of things that people might throw at us after we say this, but they might be like, but I want to do something for esports. Great, do it. But you cannot represent us all.
Oh, absolutely. And
Be-
this is something
yeah,
that grinds my gears. I'm sorry to cut you off, but this absolutely grinds my gears when somebody who's only been around for 2 or 3 years and they're like, "Oh, I know the entire industry in and out." I'm sorry, you
yeah.
don't.
I mean, you might have our numbers in your contacts, or you might have, I don't know, like you might have everyone's email. That doesn't make you an expert, and this is no shade to everyone. It's not throwing shade at anyone in particular, but I will never go out of my way and say I'm an expert. In fact, there are a lot of people I know in the industry who are much older than me, who've been in the industry longer than me. Even they don't say it. Everyone knows their place. And trust me, there are a lot of people who are great at what they do. And I respect them because they know there's a limit to all of these things. Everyone wants to make money at the end of the day, but you cannot fool an industry which is so small. I'm talking about like the people who actually are in the industry. I mean, mobile gaming has been great. I think 2018 was a great breakthrough for mobile. With PUBG Mobile, of course. Now with Free Fire and so many other titles joining in. But if you are gonna say I've been doing PUBG Mobile and Free Fire for 5 years, I'm like, oh, hello, no, there was no PUBG Mobile and Free Fire 5 years ago. You just can't make shit up.
And
And I'm not saying we are the verification process. We are not. We are not but it's okay if you can lie to us, but you cannot lie to 7, 8 other people who have been in the industry. It's just that simple. It's like a very small room, right? And if people say, I don't know this guy, then that's just how it is.
okay, I quickly want to put this disclaimer out. Two things mainly. Number one, we are going to say things which you guys might not agree to, a lot of people might not agree to, or maybe a small subset of people might not agree to. But we are going to try and provide you guys with our unfiltered opinion. Second, we are not the judges or the jury of
And also, we are not charging.
yeah, we won't be charging for this. Just by the way, so you guys don't have to go out and buy this podcast. It's free for all. And the point I was trying to make was that we are not the judges. We're not the jury of what is right and what is wrong. We're just saying that we've been around for a very long time, and we've seen things that you guys might have. A lot of new folks might not even imagine. We've seen things, and we've been operating in this industry for more than 10 years, and we've lasted for a reason. And we're just here to share our experiences. You can take away what you want. You might not agree with a lot of things, but we won't say something just to please other people,
Yeah,
which has also been a
okay,
trend apparently.
I'm sorry to cut you off, Mamba, but honestly, like one of the reasons why we wanted to start this podcast is because there are a lot of resources out there, a lot of content out there, which is being put out. Respect to whoever is, putting out uh, educational resources to educate the young masses.
Oh, yeah.
But this is one of those podcasts where everything's unfiltered. We don't wanna. So honestly, I do not want my friends to come here and say things that you guys know. I want you guys to hear about things you guys have never heard about. I want you guys to know that it's not always super amazing in this industry. There are a lot of things that you have to go through. Like I started off, of course, at like working in the corporate world where esports was just LAN cafes where prize money was what 10K, and if you look at esports now, it's pretty big. What I'm trying to share here is, hey, there is a certain process. There's a certain amount of people who's working day in and out, who's working 7 days a week. You need to hear their stories. You want to know how these people became who they are. Maybe this is the place. And we will have some really, really cool guests here. Not limiting ourselves to India, you would learn a lot of things from people from other regions, and maybe this podcast helps you. And we're not going to sugarcoat things. Of course, we might throw a couple of things here and there, but it's nothing against anyone. Just trying to get people to see the real side of esports. Yeah.
I think that people might find it very counterintuitive, like, because sure, the industry is very small and we are actually practically friends with everybody in the industry, but that does not mean we do not portray the real picture. So we're gonna try and do that. But again, you mentioned what esports was, and you said that it's always not been glorious. I actually had a can of worms that I don't know if we should open right now, but going back to 2012, Indian Gaming Carnival. A lot of a lot of the a lot of you guys might have not heard about it, but if you have, then you've survived that. And Indian Gaming Carnival was basically touted as, at that point, the biggest gaming event the country had ever seen. We had teams coming in from outside. We had Moscow 5 who was going to come here and play. Who actually did come here,
They
but
did. They did.
they did. And turns out the event was a shit show. It was an absolute scam. There were no PCs at the venue. There were just tables, and a lot of things went down. So there are two sides of esports. Obviously, we've been through all of that. And when we tell you guys that, hey, something seems fishy or something seems legit, obviously, there is a reason why that is. And now when you look at all these big events happening, I still remember 2019 was the last LAN I did. PMCO, South Asia Finals, PUBG Mobile Club Open. Insane crowd. 5 years back, I would have not been able to imagine.
Of course.
Yeah, exactly. Like 5,000 people in an arena or 10,000 people in an arena coming in, cheering the teams, the scale of the event. And everybody involved as well, they pulled it off. They pulled it off really, really well. But we've seen times where, you again go back to 2012 and, very simple wooden tables, tables which are used in marriages for food and nothing else. So do you have any memories from that, Romeo?
Oh, so of course, IGC. Okay, I'll just let's just say popped up in my head. One of the reasons why we want to talk about a fiasco like this is because I feel, again, my opinion is that everyone needs to know that, like I said, it's never always been sunshine in the whole journey or roadmap for Indian esports in general. There were a lot of things that have happened. If whoever's listening to, if you really want to know how a lot of things have shaped up, these things are important. You need to know the kind of things that have happened so that you don't make the same mistakes, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, of course, when IGC happened, I was still competing. I used to play Counter-Strike back then, and then I was super excited, and I heard that there were ads in the Delhi metro, and I was like, oh, wow, finally. But then I browsed hltv.org and I saw a lot of reports. I saw the tables and shit, and I was like, oh, I'm glad I didn't go, because of course I couldn't afford, my team couldn't afford traveling all the way there, and we are glad we didn't do that. But if you look at things now, I still remember when we announced a very big event for a publisher that I used to work for. There were a lot of teams who messaged me saying, "Is this legit?" Because I think people still remember a lot of events which scam them or were not legit. So these things are important. You need to know that there were some people who just wanted to do things for money. I'm sorry, if you wanna come into esports and if you feel like you're just gonna get business out of it immediately, then this is not the place to be. Go do something else. I think everyone in the ecosystem, whether it's org owners or EOs, they know you cannot just fool people out of doing events right away, or making money. That's what I'm trying to say. You can't just make money right away. You really, really need to be super patient. I think some of the best POs, EOs, publishers, they've already learned it. That's why they're doing good now. And it's the same reason why you do not see a lot of players, trust me. Players as in people who do business in esports, you'll still see the same people doing it because they've learned their shit throughout the years, right? That's why it's very important for you to know what has went down in the Indian esports circuit. You cannot just say, "Oh, I used to play X game and I'm an expert. I'm gonna do this." No, it doesn't work that way. And I am sorry if you feel like you're gonna rip people off by asking for registration fees. Registration fees do not exist anymore. I'm sorry.
Reminds me of those college tournaments I used to attend as a kid because, to put things in perspective, I started playing CS 1.6 back. By your standards, it's still like fairly late. 2007, 2006, 2007. Because I know people who started back in 1.5 or even in like the beta when Steam wasn't a thing. So we've seen those people come in and they've kind of navigated through the entire circuit. But so many things, right? You mentioned you can't just walk into the world of esports, for example, as a business and expect to make money straight away. Obviously, that can't happen. But I think something which is even more important is to have the right set of people navigating the world of esports for you, because there'll be a lot of people who will come up and be like, hey man, I've been around for 5 years or 10 years and I know the industry very well. We've seen people come up and we've seen people fail, and for all the wrong reasons. Because look, I at least for esports, right, I see it this way. It's a very clear distinction between knowing how the community functions and knowing the business side of things. You can't just have somebody who knows how to run a business, put them in a position where they're supposed to maybe run an esports org, or maybe I don't know, n number of things, right? It could be in any position, and you can't just expect somebody who's not been a gamer through and through to run it in the right manner.
No, I'm not. I mean, I completely agree, but I'm not saying, we are not saying you need to be a gamer, but you need to be someone who's at least been in that ecosystem. You could have been anyone. You could have been someone who was a project manager or an operations or an on-ground operations specialist, or someone who's even been an observer in games, dude. If you've observed 100 games, you know what shit goes behind what. Like, you know when to pan a certain angle. You have that expertise. You are valuable. But you cannot just put on a tuxedo and have a lot of money and then say, hey man, I've been playing games casually, but I've never competed and I never done shit in the past, but I am the head of X and I have a certain amount of money. Go ahead, do it, but you will not have the same amount of success that all these other businesses have. We always talk about we always compare ourselves I mean, of course, we always look up to our Western counterparts, right? But of even there, they do a lot of things which is very weird. But then we should learn from their mistakes, right? It's history, my friends. Like, it doesn't matter if you are white, you're Indian, if you're a person of color. If okay, esports, the great thing about esports and gaming in general is I get to play with someone who's from Philippines, get to play with someone from, I don't know, Europe. We get to enjoy the same game. It's, you forget who you are for a while. You forget all the stress in the world. That's a beauty of gaming. It's a beauty of multiplayer games, right? But somewhere down the line, we do forget everything. Second thing is, why don't we learn from all these past mistakes?
Oh, I think I think I know what you're
Yeah,
talking about. Yeah, go on.
yeah. I mean, history, history. There's a reason why a lot of the biggest or the best businessmen out there are so successful because they know a certain model works for a certain region. Let's say let's say I want to do StarCraft in India. Okay. I want to build a StarCraft Pro League. And I cannot just look at Korea and say, oh man, it worked in Korea. It's not going to work here, maybe, because people don't play StarCraft. If you're hesitant and going to put crores of rupees, what's going to happen? Nothing. I don't think you're going to have a lot of people watching it because StarCraft is not popular. The same way, there are a lot of events um, not targeting any certain entity, organization, slash publisher, or anyone. But if you're going to do the same events that has failed in the past, and if you think your region is going to do well, I'm sorry, it will not. There's a reason why they failed. It's history, my friend. Why are you repeating the same shit? And then you look at your budget sheet and then you look at your teammates and say, why didn't it work out? It didn't work out because that model doesn't work. I have a lot of events in my head, a lot of projects that I've seen come to life and trying to replicate all these models. They don't work because there's a certain reason why. And history is something that should be taken very seriously, at least in esports. You cannot just create a random business model. It doesn't work that way.
I think this also really touches upon the point of localization of content, and you worked at a
Yeah.
publisher, so you know this very well. And I remember, I think I was on Clubhouse in some room, and we were talking about this, and they're like, "Why do you think mobile games? Obviously, apart from accessibility and all the other factors that mobile games have, if you look at it objectively, if you just completely ignore accessibility or the ease of playing and the cost of playing as well, because you don't need a very expensive phone to play, for example, a game like Free Fire, right? A game that you
Yep.
so closely have
Yep.
worked with.
Yep.
One of the biggest things is localization of content. You could have something for the Indian subcontinent when Indian players open up the game. You might see a familiar face. That does not happen in PC games. If I open a Valorant, like again, just giving an objective example.
Yep. Yep.
If I open up Valorant, I'm not going to see an Indian professional player, and that does create a difference in terms of how the community perceives it as well, and a factor of relatability.
Yep.
If I'm putting this correctly.
No, I mean, I completely agree on this. Like, mobile has opened doors to a lot of brands, and to be honest, the kind of numbers, the kind of reach mobile player base brings to brands is unparalleled. Like, of course, PC is big in certain regions, but at least in India, mobile is the king, and I cannot deny that. Working with even with Garena was one of the exciting things about working at Garena, right? Or any mobile publisher in India, is because you get to work with, and I mean, your work is seen, and you get to do a lot of things, and you get to put a lot of things to a wide number of audience, and the numbers are crazy, okay? Because you sometimes are like, oh, dude, is this for real? And like, there are a lot of times when I would just look at the numbers, I'm like, okay.
I remember
Okay.
this.
Yeah,
So
like, oh,
it was
yeah.
it was the
So
World Series, yeah.
yeah, I mean, World Series, I'm not even gonna go to World Series. Like, even the Free Fire India Championship 2024, those numbers are really close to my heart, because I've never ever thought that I would be part of something like that, and um what I'm trying to say is, localization in terms of content for mobile is absolutely something that publishers have realized the whole potential about. Like, okay, you might, I mean, how many games do you see now has so much impact in their localized markets? There's you might there's PUBG, there's BGMI, then there's Free Fire. Yes, we have Fortnite, but then again, Fortnite has a whole metaverse concept. I think localization, I think Free Fire, BGMI, PUBG, I think they're kicking asses out there. Like, they're probably the best if you want to reach out to a mass number of audience. Like, you have so many celebrities, you have so many superstars. I don't even have one name. There's so many, and it was not possible with PC. Trust me. Like, at least when we used to play those games 6-7 years ago, and it's great. Trust me, that's one of the beautiful things about the mobile gaming universe, and it's. I'm not saying PC shouldn't do that, but I think PC is is such a different audience again. It's such a different audience again. If I would not believe if you would say there's a celebrity character on Valorant, and I think that access, or let's say the numbers, would not be super high initially. But if you do that same thing on mobile Valorant, for example, oh, dude, I'm sure it's gonna create a different buzz altogether, because mobile audience is really young, and dude, like, a 9-year-old kid has, they're gamers or 9-year olds, and they're really good at it. And if you're able to create an impact and show that kind of content to that 9-year old, he looks up to those people. But a 9-year old might not have the same access to a PC. Simple basic maths.
Absolutely. And this also, just to put things in perspective, right? I think this number was around 2018, 2019. And these numbers are with regards to India, once again. So around 2016 is when mobile internet really started to pick up in India. And by
Yep.
2018 or 19, we've only been able to connect 500 million users. And when I say only, obviously, it's a massive number. But when you look at the population of India, 1.3 to 1.5 billion people, it's not even
Yep.
half the population which has access to internet. Just imagine the potential. Even right now, when we think like, hey, the numbers are insane. 1.9 million on a single stream on a language, given the fact that not less than half the population is connected to
Yep.
the internet. Just imagine what it could be like 5 years down the line.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, That's the power of mobile gaming, right? And that's beautiful. And then again, like since we are talking about mobile, there are a lot of people who play PC, who love PC gaming. I am a PC gamer, of course. Do not feel like mobile gaming it belongs in the esports
I was about to get there. There is
universe.
some sort of animosity between the two.
I feel like I just want to say, like it, like I said, esports isn't about PC. It isn't about console. It's about competing. Let's forget esports for a while. Competing or playing multiplayer games is about you playing with a bunch of friends, enjoying, and then when you feel like, oh, dude, we are good at it, and then you kind of feel like, oh, we can maybe play better in a competitive way. That's esports, irrespective of what game you play. Now, if you're gonna be this brat and go and say, "Oh, you have a 10,000 rupee ka phone and you don't belong, you cannot sit with us," I'm sorry, that's not how it works. Where is your oh, we are a sports now? Because Olympics has different games. People don't discriminate an archer, or people are like, oh, you don't lift, oh, you have gold in archery, I don't care. You can't say that to people. You need to respect that. We live in different times, and I have played PC all my life. And now that I see, I am not praising esports, mobile esports, just because of its number. Of course, numbers are great, but it does take skill. I am I I'm telling you, mobile gaming is not easy, okay? I don't know how some of the pros play. And I look at the clip and I'll be like, oh, so easy. He just flipped and he just one shot. And then I'll try to do that. I'll be like, how do you run? So I might I might own them in PC, but you need to respect that. It's almost like saying, hey, you cannot afford a PC, so you cannot sit with us. I'm sorry, you need to change that mentality. Like, there's the beauty about esports is, like I said, there's always going to be new games, there's always going to be new opportunity. That's the beautiful thing about esports. This is why we kind of sustain also. Yeah,
And
I don't know if you agree, but
I
yeah.
do, 100%. It's always been very inclusive. There was, I remember when I was 12 or 13, I remember sitting down in my night dress and skinning people who like 25, 30. There's obviously it's very inclusive.
Did you say night dress?
Yeah, night dress, yeah. I mean, just imagine a 10, 11-year-old, right? Just in his cute night dress. I still
Oh,
remember.
so you're Mamba SRPJ.
It wasn't even PJ. I remember it was a red and white strip. What is it called? I don't remember what it's called. The male version of tank tops.
Oh God. Okay.
I don't even remember, but that in shorts and red and white strips. That's it. And as a matter of fact, one of the people he's a very good friend of mine, so I'm just gonna go out there and name him, Jaydeep Sood. And
Oh, okay.
I remember meeting him for the first time online, obviously like 10 years back or something like that.
Yeah.
And obviously he's elder to me, but I still remember at that point he was like, dude, this guy's hacking. So the point I'm trying to make is it was very inclusive. There was no reason for somebody to not play. And I feel there is a certain level of elitism when it comes to mobile and PC esports. And that also, there's a deep-rooted issue. Because the rate at which the industry has grown in the past couple of years, it's insane. And when for example, like let me just give you an example of a PC gamer who's been grinding it out for the past 10 years. In his own right, he's a very good player, or maybe he's a popular figure of sorts in his niche. But then you see somebody who's an absolute no-namer, played Fruit Ninja pre-2018, and now has like 5 million followers.
Yeah.
And is living his life. He's making so much money.
Yeah.
So I think there is a part of which I don't know if it's jealousy, but obviously they are going to feel a little pity for themselves. Like, hey man, look, I've been doing this for the past 10 years, and I don't accept this. I don't agree with this. I believe that it does stem from that as well.
I'll tell you, it's almost like it's very controversial also. It's almost like I am playing hockey for the past 12 years, and someone new, someone younger than me who's half my age just goes and plays cricket and gets selected, and he does great. He he's the next Virat Kohli, and I'm like, I've been playing hockey for like for like half of my life, and how are you more popular than me? it's sports for them, right? So esports here. So it's kind of similar. It's almost like sometimes there are things that are more popular in your region. I'm not saying you should stop doing what you love, but it's like I said, some things do work, some things don't. You can't be a brat or an ass about it. But yeah, it's just how it is. Like I said, StarCraft works in Korea. It doesn't work everywhere else, right?
True. It doesn't work everywhere else. And I think you gave the best possible example because obviously that is one example that most of us are going to relate to. But sure, I think this is something that our community is going to take a while to try and get over as well. And apart from that, I believe that's about it, man. I don't think
Yeah.
we can't really.
Um, I mean, like I said, right? It's if we are not accepting gamers in general, let's forget mobile console PC. If you are gonna be pushing your own brethrens here and saying, "Oh, you can't sit with us," I'm sorry. Then you are the same people out there who's gonna be hating on gaming in general. You need to support each other. You need to look at it from a perspective, from their perspective. Come on, not everyone started off playing PC. I'm sure most of them want to play PC but might not be as good. Doesn't mean they're gonna hate on you. So yeah, I'm not saying everyone is a saint. Plus, see, it's a very young target audience, and young people react really quickly. So if you I'm not super young anymore, and I completely understand where all this popularity, all this attention, or like the kind of attention they get. I've worked with so many influencers or personalities who are half my age and are doing really great, and I see why they're doing better than some of the people who've been there uh, for ages. But I don't think there's any need for the other person to hate on them because everyone started off differently, dude. Like, yeah, it's. Why do you think Shroud and Ninja are more celebrated, so successful? They are not the ones chasing the trend. They create the trend, dude. They love what they do. You don't see them hating on mobile gamers. I'm sorry, they don't. And that's what makes them Shroud and Ninja. If you want to be the next Shroud and Ninja, I'm sure you can learn a thing or two from them. I'm not saying they're perfect, but yeah, why don't you take bits and pieces from every good personality out there and maybe put that in your, like in your work reason. I don't know what you want to stream. I actually there's no playbook to being successful. But there is a reason why they're the Shroud and Ninjas of the world, right? Yeah.
True. And I think the one thing you mentioned about there's no playbook to being successful, right? I think yesterday or the day before yesterday, we saw this guy on a treadmill playing Valorant.
Yes.
So I'm not saying you always have to stand out. It's just that people sometimes want a reason to watch you. Let's take my example, Romeo. I've been streaming for what, the past 5 years on and off, the past 6 years. But even before YouTube had a streaming thing, I used to stream on Twitch. And I don't think I've ever crossed, apart from this one time when I streamed Free Fire, I was sitting with like 5,000 viewers or something like that. I don't think when I play a PC game, I've crossed like 20 viewers concurrent on an average. And maybe, look, I'm not saying I don't have it or I have it, but just maybe there is something about my personality when I stream. It's not something that the masses want. It's a very chill stream. But those 20 people who do drop by are very loyal. They will drop by no matter what I do. Even if I'm sleeping on the chair, they will probably drop by. So people need a reason to watch you. And I know we're segueing into completely different, on a completely different topic right now. But as somebody who wants to start off as a content creator, right? You can't just be like, hey man, something worked for this content creator. I'm going to make similar content and I'm going to get the numbers. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. They need to see you as your own entity. You can't copy somebody. You can't be like, hey man, Shroud is getting a lot of views because apparently he played PUBG PC and he had this insane snipe on Sandhawk, which the entire world knows about. I think it was Miramar. If I don't remember I don't even remember. But it's been a while since I played PUBG, by the way, PUBG PC. But he landed on Hacienda. Yeah, Hacienda. He landed in Hacienda, and that's one clip the entire world has seen. Anybody who follows streamer, that one clip, everybody's seen. But you can't always be like, hey man, no, if it worked for him, it's going to work for me. It simply just does not work that way.
It doesn't. I'm okay. Like, look at our content creators in India. They're very different. Of course, you are one of them, so you understand that. You cannot do the same shit that they do here. You can't. Like, you just can't be playing LOL one day like Ninja does. I like seeing him play LOL and Rage and Mauled. I love that. And you cannot replicate that here. You have a very different set of audience here. And I think we know what kind of works right now for a while. But then not many people want to do that. It's just because that's just not who they are, right? Like you said, right? You when you played mobile, you had pretty decent watching. Maybe you're not good at it, and maybe you don't enjoy it. That's all. It's not because you hate the game. You just don't want to disappoint your viewers. Maybe that, hey man, do you want me to see? Do you want me to see dying
Oh, yeah.
as soon as I drop? Then yeah, come watch me. There you go. But maybe you really want to play Valorant with a couple of your friends, and you enjoy that, and you appreciate those people dropping by who's watching your stream. Yeah, I mean, I think this is not rocket science, and then a lot of people do a lot of random things on stream, and maybe they get the numbers. But honestly, when I used to work with a lot of people for content, they used to also say, what game should I stream? I always had one answer: just play what you enjoy. If you feel you would stream PUBG PC or Valorant, and if you feel your audience doesn't resonate, doesn't want to watch it, then there's no point. Yeah, if you enjoy it, go ahead, do it. I feel like people sometimes forget that they need to enjoy the game. You
I,
need to enjoy the game, dude. You can't just play some random game for 6-7 hours.
and I think it also has to do with the fact that let's talk about content creation for a bit, because this is something I really relate to, and that's also one of the reasons why I randomly decided to just quit streaming for a month at least. And a lot of times people just forget why they started. When I started streaming, I just wanted to stream. And back in those days, so sure, Shroud was around, Ninja was around, but they were not the mega superstars you see they are today. And a lot of people get carried away with the numbers, with the money involved as well. As a matter of fact, when you see all these streamers or content creators or players go out and buy fancy cars, and you're like, I want to do this as well. But somewhere, at some point down the line, they kind of lose their way, and it becomes additional pressure for them. I need to hit those numbers, and that also comes. Imagine you get your first sponsorship deal, which happened to me a couple of months back. I had a wonderful relationship with them, but since I knew exactly what I wanted, and I wasn't bothered about the numbers as much, and I was completely okay if eventually the sponsor didn't want to work with me, or if I had to drop the sponsor because of my numbers, I was fine with it because I was very staunch in my approach. But for a lot of people, that's not the case.
I to be honest, it's not something I can exactly relate to because I've never been a content creator, but I do remember, you work with a wide array of, let's say, brands now. And I know, I'm not just gonna say it. People might be like, it's because Mamba bet high or Mamba is the one sitting. It's not that. Like, some people actually stream a certain game because they actually like it. I will not name a certain content creator, and it's fun watching them. It's so natural. And then there are some content creators who'll play a certain game. They might not like it, and then it's not fun watching them. For you would not want to spend a lot of time. And like you said, yeah, people do get lost. I get it. You need to pay your bills at the end of the day, but you also do not want to hate what you're doing, because you get burned out really fast once you start working like a robot, and you really don't enjoy doing that. And yeah, and there's so many things that we can talk about when it comes to content
Oh, a
creations.
lot.
And yeah,
Honestly,
it's like a never ending path.
that is true. But since you mentioned burnout, right? Every time we get off a topic, I'm like, maybe is this where it ends? But then I hear a buzzword, and I'm like, no, we need to talk about this, and burnout is one of them. You've been there, I've been there, we've all been there at some point. And a lot of times, the most difficult part is not realizing when you're burnt out. And I realized this the last year. I think it was October when I went out for a trip. Was so we had an event going on called the Diwali All Stars, and I skipped the event. And it's not something that a lot of people, especially in the early days of their career, can do. I was able to do it because at that point I was like, I need this break. And when I came back, and that was, by the way, that was my first vacation in 5 years. The last
Okay.
time I went out was in 2015. Then I went
Guys,
out.
okay, how old are you, Mama?
I'm 24.
See? 24, burnout, 5 years vacation. TLDR, esports is not just rainbows and sunshine. Not even kidding. Like, I am not even kidding. Whether you work for a publisher, whether you work as an independent caster, content creator, you or a player. Oh, there's so many things I want to talk about here. Like, I completely get it. In fact, I think you spoke to me when you wanted to take a break, and I was like, do it. If you feel you need to, do it, because you do not want to force yourself to work because you're gonna hate what you do. It's as simple as that. Like, and I know, like, it's a whole different topic again, burnout, mental health. I am happy that we a lot of people talk about it freely now, but it is very important. If you do not feel like doing something because you're tired, don't do it. Just why do you want to mess it up? Like, if you mess it up, you might not get hired again, or you might just hate it, and you're just gonna be angry all the time. You do not want that version of you coming out when you work in such a small industry.
You remember
Yeah.
Opas?
Yes. There is an infamous clip of Mamba.
Oh yeah. By the way, it's private. Nobody can find it. It's just
Yeah.
a very small bunch of people know what happened on Opas, and I believe it was one of those times probably because I do not relate to the person that I see in that video, and I remember the last time I saw the video, I was like, that can't possibly be me. But going back to burnout, right? A lot of times, okay, let me speak about this from the perspective of a caster or somebody who's dependent on gigs to earn their living, right? Now,
Yep.
I think I'm more comfortable talking about it now because it's been a while since I've been working,
Yep.
and now I feel I'm not saying that I've achieved a lot. I haven't. In the grand scheme of things, I haven't. But I talk about it now, and I am very open about it. Like, hey man, I feel burnt out. I don't want to do this event, or I skip an event or two because I know it is going to affect my performance, and that's in the long run it doesn't help you. But there are a lot of people who are trying to break into the industry, and they just either can't, they don't have the confidence to say no, or they feel that they are in a position where they can't say no. It could be because of money, it could be because of how difficult it is sometimes for you to actually get into a position where you make a decent living out of it. And again, money is one thing that I wanted to touch upon since the longest time, right? Because you do see your superstars make a lot of money, sure, but there's actually very few people even now who can make a decent living out of gaming or esports or from the industry as a whole.
Um. See, again, you know the whole. You have the whole experience as a caster. You are the right guy to talk about it. I can talk about it from a publisher perspective, maybe, or for someone who's worked behind the scenes to make things happen. Um, we also burn out, of course. It's also because of the number of events we have, number of projects that run simultaneously. But you see a lot. You see a lot of. Like I talk to a lot of other casters as well, and they do ask me, "Hey, I'm gonna take a break." I said, go ahead. And the thing that stops them from taking a break is, of course, one, money. Second, if you are an independent caster, if you're not signed to an agency or a streaming platform, blah, blah, blah. Second, of course, is they feel like they'll get replaced, which I think is not entirely true. If you are good at what you do, if you take a break for like 3 weeks, also, no one can replace you.
That is true.
That is something you need to understand. And in that process of you not taking a break, you might just lose yourself, and you are gonna, you might not be the same caster as you used to be, and your quality is not going to be the same. You're not going to be putting out the same type of insights, or I mean great quality insights as you used to. So one big when because this is such a huge topic, burnout. So of course, as publishers, we look at other publishers and we see the kind of roadmap they have. And one of the biggest mistakes publishers do is put out so many events in such a big way that forces players to commit so much. They also forget, okay, publishers also know they want to make this a sport, right? But you do not see a sport which runs for 30 days. You don't see a sport that runs for 3 weeks. You need to give players a chance to go back to their homes or spend some time. These are young athletes. Let's just acknowledge them as athletes, or let's just call them young competitors. They need that break. What a lot of people do not understand is it takes hours and hours of practice, thousands of hours to get to a certain level. If you're going to do a certain event which tracks for 3-4 weeks, and you expect them to play another event the same month, the scene is just going to be very hard for the players, because you're not going to see a lot of quality matchups anymore. One, your audience is just going to get tired. The audience fatigue is real. There's a reason why I really respect a lot of publishers out there who actually have a very good esports ecosystem. Riot Games is one. I'm not afraid to name them. I really respect what they do, and that's also why they have such a good, stable pro slash franchise slash grassroots ecosystem. A lot of people might say that will not work in India, but okay, then let's make a system where you do not burn out your players. I still feel like this is where a lot of publishers still lack, or even TOs. Yeah. So we forget the essence of competing. That's where we kind of, like you said, we lose our way. Yeah. Because we are so,
Caught
we're
up.
so keen. Yeah, we're so caught up on making those numbers, or we just want to be seen. At the end of the day, without your players, you're not there. And yeah, you cannot forget that. Yeah.
I think I actually want to bring up a very different side of what we just talked about. There are two things, obviously, I think, and they're complete polar opposites. What you talked about, viewer fatigue, publisher side of things, player side of things, on with regards to performance. But one thing that I want to talk about is the personal side of things,
Okay.
and it's immense. The amount of pressure, the impact that all of this has is immense. It's crazy, because let me give you an example. I had an event which had come up, and I had agreed to the event a month prior, and I could have easily, towards the end, when I had a week long buffer, I could have said, "Hey man, I can't make it on this date because my cousin was getting engaged." Now the
Okay.
problem was, my for whatever reason my schedule was that caught up. I could not make it to the engagement. My cousin, my little cousin's engagement, and sometimes things like these happen because you've already made a commitment. You don't want to backtrack on it. And it ripples out to your personal relationships. It ripples out to your personal life as well. As a matter of fact, I am 24 right now. I am at the peak of my youth, if you want to put it that way.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I can't have a functional relationship. I believe the way I work right now, I genuinely cannot have a love life. I just can't. There's a reason, because it's not fair for the other person. It's going to be very rare where the kind of time commitment you have towards your work, that the other person is either going to understand or is going to be willing to take. And I'm not saying I'm the victim over here. I'm absolutely not the victim, because I'm running after my dreams. I love what I do. It brings me joy. So I am sorted that way. But it's unfair to the other person. And I'm not the only example. I'm sure there have been a lot of other people in the esports industry. We know a few, as a matter of fact, who've either not been able to carry on a relationship, or do not get involved because they know they can't support it.
Yeah. Like I said, one misconception about esports, people might see a certain IEM video or might see some more, like world championship video, and you're like, oh my god, let's do this in India. Hey, esports. And once they get into the whole drill, and once they get their hands dirty, and they're like, oh god, I have to put what 12 hours a day, I have to put 80 hours a week, no weekends. And mind you, esports events do happen on weekends. Okay, so if
Mostly
you are
on weekends,
looking,
as a matter of fact.
yeah, if you feel it's a 9 to 5 drill, great, like work life balance. If you really want to know, or if you are starting off, I will not sugarcoat it for you. I am sorry, this is not the industry for you. If you feel that's how it is, it's for any other industry out there also, I guess. If you want to be the best in cricket, like a very super competitive region like India, I don't, why would a certain selector choose you out of all the other guys, right? Same in esports. There's so many people who want to be in that esports. Why they want to sit in that bus, which only can accommodate a certain amount of people. I am saying that it's not easy. The hours are long. Everyone has sort of an insight. What different or what special thing are you bringing to the table? What I'm trying to say is esports is not the kind of career, if you want to choose, if you feel like it's a 9 to 5, oh chill, laid back. Of course, this is where I said, if you want to do it and you enjoy the hustle, if you really want to make something out of it, great, do it. If you feel, oh, I'm going to earn X amount of money, I'm going to chill, I'm going to have a great time, and if you treat it like any other job out there, it's not. It's really not. I honestly have seen a lot of people who work with me in the past, and they've left the industry because they just could not balance a lot of things. I completely agree, and I really appreciate you talking about something very personal. And it's not like like I work with a publisher, right? And I know how competitive things get. I'm not saying was competing with my colleagues, but the market is super fast. Mobile gaming, for example, right? And you need to think about so many things. You need to juggle a lot of things, and your job is really special. You do feel special. This is not the kind of job that others get to do. You get to see results, amazing results. But if you expect this to be like a walk in the park, or you just feel like, oh, I'm gonna put some numbers, I'm gonna put some number, yada yada, and then you're just gonna shut off your laptop by 5 p.m. You can go and have a cappuccino or a beer. No, this is not the kind of career you would really enjoy. And of course, the joy you see when you hit your numbers, the joy you see when when you get those results, when you get to see those amazing production quality, whatever you work with, and you get to work with amazing set of people, amazing, great. But if you feel like, hey man, it's 9 to 5, I'm gonna kick everyone's ass, I'm gonna make a lot of money, it's so easy. Nahi, I'm sorry, like, go and talk to anyone who's been in the industry for so long. They'll probably tell you their experience. Yeah.
And this actually reminds me of an incident in my life. So 2016, I just started casting. January of 2016, and December 2016, I suddenly had an opportunity to go to an international LAN event within a year of having started casting. Now, that was such an unexpected thing. The fact that I even became a caster out of all the things that could have happened.
I don't think you wanted to become one,
Oh,
right?
absolutely not. That's a completely different story. I don't think anybody who started casting before 2017 wanted to be a caster.
I'll be honest. I at least for our timeline, Kelo, or people who've been with us in that same
Sound like
timeline,
such
or
boomers, no?
I don't feel like any of us chose to be in this industry. At least for most of the people I know, like we didn't wake up one day and be like, oh, I'm gonna become this guy one day. I want to work in esports. Like, I feel like a lot of things led us to where we are. That is exactly why we are doing this podcast. We want people to not do or make some of the mistakes with it.
Oh, absolutely. But you talked about the satisfaction of achieving what you wanted to, right?
Yep, yep,
So where I was so in December I was in a back and forth conversation. End of November, as a matter of fact, I was in a back and forth conversation with the guys who were executing the event, and then I finally received the letter, the invitation letter with the
yep.
stamp and everything. I cried. I bawled my eyes out. I walked up to my mom. I put my head in her lap and I literally kneeled down and I bawled my eyes out. So the satisfaction is completely out of the world, sure, but there's a massive price to pay. Sometimes you feel like you lose a part of yourself along the way, which you feel maybe is that something you would be able to make peace with. I don't know. Even right now I feel like maybe I could have lived my college life a little different, because for me my college life was going to college and gaming, esports, whatever I was casting, playing, whatever I was doing. But this also leads me to one more thing that a lot of the newer generation has a misconception about, or if even if not a misconception, it's actually it's a two-sided coin. There are people with extravagant expectations of the money involved, and then there are people who have no idea what kind of money is involved. And that brings me to this question. And I think you're the perfect guy to answer this. I mean, obviously, I can give you my perspective as somebody who makes money out of it. But since you've also been on the side of things where you pay people money to
Yeah.
execute things, what are the wages involved over here? Because a lot of times, some people get way underpaid, and sometimes people ask for the kind of money where we're like, dude, really? Come on, it's not supposed to be like this.
Honestly, one of the reasons why I love working with Garena, right? I'm truly, of course, I'm just gonna say like one of the best experiences when it came to building things from the ground up. Of course, was in Garena. Um, Something that I got to do as a publisher, which is great, plus in India, with the kind of numbers we have. One of the things I really put my foot down, and I really wanted to commit to people that we hire as talent, was we wanted them to feel secure. How? Of course, there's a certain number you both need to agree. Very simple business, right?
Yeah.
You cannot just say, I'm a publisher, I'm just gonna pay you this. You have to say yes. It's the quality over quantity thing. If you are not gonna pay someone who's new, and let's just say I hire someone new, and let's say I pay him like a decent monthly salary or a decent rate. What I always made sure is, if you do good, you will get more gigs. Simple maths. That's how every artist works there, right? Every comedian, that's how they start off. But what I have started seeing, I am sure I've worked with so many talents in the 16, 18 months, and I've had great relationships with almost every one of them, um, at least in the money side of things, right? What I've seen other people exploit. I'm not saying everyone has the same budget as a publisher. They will not. I get it. But that doesn't mean that you get to hire someone, commit to someone, and then say, hey man, why don't you cast 12 hours a day, 10 hours a day, and you get paid X amount of money. And so this is where the problem is, okay? I'm not saying you need to match with a certain bigger company's wages or a rate. You need to make sure the caster or the talent you're approaching also accepts what you're offering. What happens is when you're kind of ruining the whole ecosystem this way.
True.
If your talent is not happy with it, that security thing, like I said, right? People get insecure. Then they might say, okay, I'm okay with. So this is where you create one, you are messing with their rates. Number two, you're burning them out. You're making them work 3 times more. And then you justify by saying, I don't have budget for budget. But then you go and hire someone who do not have even half of the experience of that caster or a talent or host or analyst, whatever you want to call it here. And then you pay them more. And like I said, this community is very small. And then the history part. This is where it comes in. You learn from history. So that caster is never gonna cast for you again. I am saying there are a lot of people, there are a lot of organizations that need to know that equal pay, or let's just say fair pay. Come on, like this is not rocket science, guys. Like you really need to appreciate someone's time here. We talk about glorifying the sport so much, but we forget that these talents matter. Look at some of the biggest events in esports history. When you look at the replays, you know why we get goosebumps is because the talents, the things that they say. I don't remember the caster here. I'm gonna be pretty horrible at it, but Iceland, Valorant,
Ah,
one of the
yeah.
best quotes when Tens jump Frenzy's headshots with Arena, and the caster says, "Like I told you, we are just living in Tens's world." You know, like I might mess up the quote, but casters matter. Those voices, those lines. You know why I like working in esports is because I get to hear, get to learn a lot of insights from these casters who spend day and night. I can name so many casters who have notebooks, have as thick as a dictionary, and they have written down. So that's the kind of, like the kind of numbers they write down, and then of course you are one, Mama. Like this, the kind of hard work you guys, the kind of rehearsal you guys do. I am saying you are not respecting. If you are someone who's coming in new, and if you are not gonna respect the talent's hard work, and if you feel you could just get away with it, you would say, hey, we are this blah blah blah, we are the biggest blah blah. But when it comes to paying your talent, why are you not paying them that amount they want? I am sure casters do not quote crazy numbers. I am
No, they
very
don't.
sure. I have worked with a lot of casters. I'm not even kidding. One of the reasons why I really, really like working with Garena was we made sure the casters were not exploited by anyone that would do the execution part for us. I will make sure that never happens where I go. I respect admins. I respect every other young talent coming on board, giving his time. There's so many unsung heroes. Trust me, there are a lot of people behind the scenes. There are a lot of production guys, there are a lot of admins who make sure the players are there, present for the interviews. The whole show is run by 100 people. And if you do not start paying everyone equal, or let's just say fair
Fair.
wages,
Yeah.
the ecosystem is always gonna keep changing, because there's not gonna be a consistent, that experienced people will never stick around, because they're gonna go to the next best thing. And I think people forget that, fair wages, at least in esports, needs to be a thing. I'm sorry, if you cannot pay them, what they want, or at least there's a desired amount, then I'm sorry, you also need to know that that's not how it works.
I've seen a lot of my colleagues, a lot of my friends make career moves because of either
Yeah.
not having that security or not being paid enough, and they just switch the positions, or they leave a place, or they join a place because they didn't have security. And I'm not just saying this because you were at Garena, but the one thing that I in my entire career that I've noticed and I've loved the most is when publishers, for example, when you decided that, you know what, we are going to control the talent, and I'm talking purely from a talent perspective. Obviously there are a lot of unsung heroes. You talk about admins, rarely get mentioned, but the kind of work they do, they help us make sure that the show runs smoothly. And this reminds me of a
Yep.
story. I'll just give an excerpt. I think it was a story about one of the US presidents. Walked in. He was on a trip to the NASA HQ or something like that, and there was a janitor, and even that janitor was helping put a man on the moon. I know it sounds very
Yep.
extravagant in the large scale of things, but all these things matter. People who are involved on the back end, and that's why you'll notice a lot of times when I have been casting, I always make sure that I try and appreciate people who are working in the production team or at the back end, and I try and give them a shout, because that shot, I'm not even talking money, but that helps. That really helps. That
Yep. Yep.
appreciation helps. But you talked about fair wages, right? the one thing I really loved about Garena, and the reason why I've loved working with them, is because they made sure that they will control the talent. And I love it not because I have been getting consistent gigs, because it's based on merit. And I am not worried about the fact that, hey, what if they find somebody cheaper? What if they hire somebody who's going to undercut me? And that's a very real thing, by the way. A lot of talent is not open to discussing what rates they're getting paid and end up getting exploited because they feel scared that what if I tell him my rates, or what if I tell him my rates and they undercut me? In an ideal world, in a utopian world, it is supposed to be based on merit. If you have enough experience, if you're a good storyteller, you will get the job. But obviously, we do not live in that ideal world, Romeo. We just don't. We don't.
I think we can talk about this with another guest which you
Oh,
know what
absolutely,
and
absolutely.
I feel like that certain guests can weigh in also, because we don't want people to feel that we are the only ones talking about it. But there are hundreds of people who feel the same way, who are talents, and
I can't wait for that, honestly.
honestly, I feel really bad when that happens. There's a lot of people who also ask me if they should consider casting a third party, even just because
Ooh.
they feel like, oh, if I don't do this, maybe they'll blacklist me. It's okay, dude. Like, come on. Like, if they treat you a certain way, even before you're joining them in that desk, that I'm sorry, that's not a place you want to be around.
It's a red
It's
flag.
just yeah, it's a red flag. That's just basic. And I get it. It's very hard for me. It's very easy for me to just say it, but then again, you need to think a little long term also. You don't want to get exploited so much. You will, if you get exploited early on, people are always gonna keep you as a backup guy. You're gonna keep you as a sasta guy, the cheap guy. I don't care how well you do it. That's how you're gonna get perceived. You need to put your foot down and say, "Hey, man, I'm gonna put in 100%. These are my rates." That's all. I feel like if you see, this is a handshake. You cannot be giving them whatever they want. You also need to negotiate a little better. I know it's very easier said than done, and it's this also one reason why we are talking about it here.
No, absolutely, that is true. And I think there's a massive power imbalance when it comes to it, because, and again, it's not just power imbalance, it's a different equation altogether. It's a very young demographic. For example, imagine an 18-year-old who has no experience in the corporate world, who has no experience negotiating, is fresh out of school, or is just heading into college, has never worked a job in his life, and is offered his first casting gig. And I'm going to repeat the story when we have that guest on board, but I need to say this. There was a time when my first paid gig, I
Mm,
underquoted so much.
mm.
Back in 2016, I underquoted so much that the EO was like, hey man, you know what? Take 10% more. That is how crazy it is, because I just did not have an idea. And that is the reason that there needs to be a more open dialogue about this
Yeah,
amongst talent in the industry, or on this podcast, as a matter of fact.
okay. A lot of people who might listen to it might be like, then what do I do so that I stand out, or what do I do that I can code better? Simple. Maybe you cast in a certain way, or you bring something different than other casters. Then you quote whatever shit you want. I'm not saying you you quote a very crazy number, but what I'm trying to say is, what if you're one of the most hardworking guys, and what if you send them a tape and you're like, hey, I know certain insights that maybe the other casters have not got their hands on. That's where you're different. Or maybe you are one really funny clown of a caster that they would love to have. That's where you step up. That's where you have that bargaining power, right? And that's fair.
The question is, what do
If
you
you,
bring to the table? Yeah, sorry, go on.
yeah, but you cannot also be an ass and say, oh yeah, I've been doing this with the publisher, so give me 100% more. So that also isn't fair. So what I'm trying to say is, bring something unique to the table, be fair, be reasonable. I'm sure it will work out. If it doesn't, there's so many events. I'm sorry, there are so many events.
And okay, let me give you two extreme examples. These are from CS:GO. So for anybody who's followed CS:GO might know these guys. For anybody who doesn't, or hasn't followed CS:GO, look them
It's
up.
Counter-Strike Global Offensive.
Counter-Strike Global Offensive, yes. And also, every time we use a Hindi word, we need to like put out a disclaimer. Sasta means cheap. Just saying. Romeo used it
Yeah.
a while back, but Sasta is equal to cheap. But the two people that I'm talking about, right? One is Yanko, YNK. Incredible insight. He's the weatherman for CS:GO. And on the other side, a person who brings a lot of banter and is also regarded as a historian of Counter-Strike and esports in general is Duncan Thorin Shields.
Yeah.
He has his own personality, and a lot of times, okay, I'm not saying this with a negative connotation, but sometimes for a desk host, it might be a nightmare to have him on the desk because you don't know what he's going to say. But that's the entire USP. That is the entire personality that he brings on board. And some people want it, some people don't. So don't be scared of being yourself. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying go out there and say things which are obviously inappropriate or act in a certain manner. But I'm just saying that everybody has their own strengths, and just use that to your best advantage.
Yeah, I mean, I look at all the talents, okay? If you would say a certain talent's name, and the first thing that comes into mind might be, oh, funny caster or entertainer, or oh, great insights. That's what you should be bringing to the table. Like,
But I think insight is something that has to be common across the board.
of course,
You
of
can't
course,
cast a title and you can be like, oh, I don't know what this ability is called, and you're casting that, you're casting that match or that event, and
yeah, I mean, I completely get it. I honestly watch a lot of streams, and I'm on a break right now, and I've been watching a lot of streams, okay, like regional events, and I see a lot of cars. I'm not gonna throw anyone under the bus, but I sometimes feel like there's a certain level or there's a certain tier of casters also, which I feel like do not put in the work. I'm sorry, work. There are some, and I'll just give you an example. It was one of these tournaments. I wouldn't name them, and I
yeah,
felt like the caster said things which were very obvious. For
reading the
example,
screen basically.
it's almost like saying, it's a 1v3, right? And I can see it's a 1v3. I see that character is going to a certain area, and you do not need to. I get it. There's something called play by play, but there was nothing exciting happening. Why don't you do some homework? And come on, events are not a day to. Well, it's not. Events are spread across months now. You have so much insights you can work with. Why don't you educate the casters? The audience, and talk about why the certain team is going to a certain site or a certain part of the map. Talk about why they're doing it or why this region's teams does this. Why don't you educate the audience? This is where you get to show your prowess. You get to show people that, hey man, I'm a brilliant caster. Unless you look like Johnny Bravo and the camera cannot stop panning at you, then please go ahead. Say whatever you want. The camera is always gonna be looking at you and probably not even looking at the game. But I am being very honest. A lot of the casters, in certain games, do not put a lot of effort. And what happens here is, again, like I said, the ecosystem kind of suffers. The same casters the same game could have been casters by other better casters. I'm sorry, just people might say, oh, but you cannot please everyone. But this industry is not that big yet that we have 500 casters. I'm sure every caster knows everyone. They know. It's like a small classroom. You need to. So, if you are doing a prestigious event, you also need to get the best casters. Just simple math. If you feel you need to bring in a certain set of casters, make sure those casters bring something that the others don't. And I'm sorry, in that case, in that game I saw or that match, I don't feel like those certain casters bought something extra that the other existing casters did. Couldn't. I mean, I'm just saying that you could have balanced it out, maybe. And also, for the love of God, okay, if you are casting a certain game, please make sure you know how to play the game. At least to us, I'm not saying you need to be the best grandmaster or challenger or radiant or master player out there or conqueror. I'm saying you need to really know at least the basics, or at least figure out what the strengths or meta or is of the game, or at least know what a certain team likes to does. At least get to know the history of that team, because trust me, India is big right now, and when you everyone is watching us right now, you do not want to look mediocre in any way. We cannot make a lot of mistakes anymore. There's so many things that India gets hate for. Hackers, the kind of toxic environment. Of course, I'm not saying multiplayer games are oh great. It's not
It's not
toxic.
rainbows and sunshine. It's not.
Yeah, but I'm saying let's not put out mediocre casting at big events. I am and I did talk about this at a very personal level with a lot of the community members, and they agreed. The thing is, no one talked about it, but here we are. We are talking about it. It's unfiltered, and I just want to say that let's just give everyone an equal opportunity when it comes to talent, operations, everything. I'm sure we all can add value somewhere or the other and make this whole thing work. Yeah.
I think that's very, very appropriately said, because the one thing that really stood out for me was knowing the game. And okay, I'll be very honest. I have personally been in a position where I was hosting a desk for a MOBA. You know this. I don't know how many people know this.
I know. I know
Yeah.
this.
So
And Mamba doesn't play MOBAs. Okay?
I absolutely do not play MOBA, but I was in a position where I had to do it. And it was at the beginning of my career, so it's not like I would have turned it down anyway. But the event was scheduled in a manner where there were FPS games happening and there were MOBAs happening in the same day, and I was the sole desk host. And I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying the reason why I'm giving you guys this example is because I'm not saying I'm holier than thou. I've been there. I don't know if I should call this my mistake, but it happens to the best of us. We've all been there. But eventually the product suffers. And sure, in the Indian market, sometimes you might fail to realize this because the audience is so new, you have the numbers as well. But I think there's a much deeper question that needs to be asked. Like, are we just going to let quality of the broadcast just slide away like that and they fade away into darkness? And I really wanted to put this out because a lot of times, if somebody who's been following me for a while and here's the podcast, like, oh, Mama's done this before, but that's the entire point. We all have been there, but that is not something that should be the case. Absolutely not.
It's like making Ravi Shastri commentate on hockey.
Like a tracer bullet.
Yeah. I mean, Ravi Shastri might bring you insights for cricket, but maybe he isn't the right guy for hockey or basketball for that matter. That's just another close example. If we start comparing casting talent to real life sports commentators, I'm sorry I had to use the word real life. Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is, there's not a lot. Let's just say we are basically not giving room to new talent. So let's say if we don't hire quality talent, and then let's just say someone wants to get into casting, they're just gonna be like, oh, okay, no matter what I do, they're just gonna get someone who's more popular. So I'm just saying, bring something unique to the table. I'm sure people will appreciate that.
I still feel this. In my position, in my shoes, and I say this as Mamba in India, I still feel this. And I think we've had numerous conversations about this as well, where I myself have been insecure about a lot of things. And I think I blatantly, like, straight up asked you this question. How important is it for casters to have numbers, be it on social media, be it anywhere? And your answer at that point was like, you don't care about it.
I don't, because I, as a publisher, don't. But if you're casting my event, I don't care where or what your number is, as long as you know how to bring hype, insights, and you have a acceptable voice, you're great. But if you're gonna come in and you're just gonna have decent numbers and you really do not know what you're talking about, the stream is just not gonna do good.
That is true.
It's just not it from the whole quality perspective. It's not going to do good at all. It's just gonna look really bad. Yeah.
That is true. That is true. But it's been quite insightful, Romeo.